Michael Thomas has agreed to a restructured deal with the New Orleans Saints, a 1-year, $10 million contract that has a maximum value of $15 million. Michael Thomas, who looked like he was going to be on the way out in New Orleans, is staying. And all of a sudden, this Saints offense is starting to look really quite fun. Okay, they're hemorrhaging talent on the defense. They don't have any defensive linemen left anymore except Cameron Jordan, effectively. But Michael Thomas now back in the fold. Chris Olave from last year. Rashid Shaheed, who stepped up and really broke out. At tight ends, we've got Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, of course. And the backfield is still there. Derek Carr has got some players to work with here.
No doubt about it. Jameis back as well, so bringing the band back together. Very interesting on Michael Thomas. I know we had him on our free agent board. The thought process there, and I've never seen this in my entire life, was the previous restructured deal, reworked deal, I should say. It literally said on the NFLPA filing, this helps the Saints do a post-June 1 release of Michael Thomas if they want to go that route. So what New Orleans did was they put this basically a deadline to sign a new deal with Michael Thomas. There was a $32 million roster bonus for 2024 that would have become fully guaranteed later this week if they didn't do this rework deal. So what it did is they now negotiate below that number. They get this 1-year flyer in there for him. Like you said, I mean, there's a talented offense. He was still good last year when he did play in 3 games. And he had 3 touchdowns, had a bunch of receptions. Maybe he's not 2019 170 catch Michael Thomas, but he's still a very good player when healthy.
That's the thing. Like, okay, we've now gone 2 seasons of him being pretty banged up. Three seasons, I guess. 2 years of actual play and 3 total seasons of him really not being a factor at all. But in all that time, he's still been good. Maybe we didn't see the monster numbers he put up when he was consistently leading the league in targets, receptions, all those kinds of things, and putting up, PFF grades of 90 plus every season. But even the diminished version of Michael Thomas, when he's been out on the field, has been effective, productive, and a good and dangerous player. And now the Saints actually have, some complements. They have some viable alternatives. They've got those speedsters in guys like Shaheed. They've got guys like Olave that they brought in who can do a bit of everything. If Thomas is anywhere near healthy, like anything above sort of permanent prohibitive injury problems going forward, like Derek Carr can make some noise in this offense.
Yeah, and we talk about Olave too. In the 2 games, weeks 2 and 3 with Michael Thomas, 13 targets for 5 receptions in week 2, 12 targets for 9 receptions, 147 yards in week 3. If you get both of them out there and have attention going to those guys, especially we're kind of expecting Alvin Kamara may miss a little bit of time with a suspension to start the year. Juwan Johnson underrated as well. A good 1-year extension for him, a good flex tight end. You make a joke about Taysom Hill, but I'm sure he'll be running the ball a good amount, at least early in the year without Kamara. Like, it's for Carr, obviously had a lot of great weapons in Las Vegas, but
sure,
potential here is pretty high.
Yeah, and look, again, Jameis Winston is back in case the whole thing goes completely south with Derek Carr. But this is fascinating because this is a division there to be won. Like, one of the things that made the Saints the team that made all the sense in the world for Derek Carr is because they're not in the same situation as, say, the Jets are, where they're in one of the toughest divisions in the NFL, in a conference where everybody looks like a nightmare. If you're the Jets, you needed to swing for the fences because the alternative just isn't going to get it done. Derek Carr is probably not going to win you the NFC East, let alone make some noise once he makes it to the playoffs. But Derek Carr, with this kind of weaponry around him, can absolutely win the NFC South. And all of a sudden, the Saints are in the playoffs in a conference that doesn't look particularly fearsome outside of a couple of teams. Like, we've sort of been writing the Saints off as just this team that's, Nick Wright is on this tour hammering them for mismanagement of the salary cap, and now they kick the can down the road as long as they had Drew Brees, and now the time has come to live through the consequences of that. But this is a team that could be good this year.
That's the thing. We talked about the flip side of Jimmy Garoppolo going from a great defense to a bad one in Las Vegas. Have not finished top 25 in e-paper play allowed. The Saints have finished top 10 in e-paper play allowed in every season the last 4 years. It is the best defense that Derek Carr has played with by a mile. Now, yes, they do not have an interior defender on the roster right now, so it would certainly help to add some big guys up front. But, they can address that in the draft. They can do some smaller signings there. Look, Carolina, we're all excited about them, of course. He'll get the rookie quarterback. He'll be throwing to you and me out there. Tampa Bay is not going to be good. Baker Mayfield, I think they're tanking for Caleb Williams, or who knows what they're doing. And then Atlanta, they made some nice moves. We talked about them this morning. They've made some solid moves, but still, Derek Carr versus a Desmond Ridder with rosters that both have some holes, we would lean Derek Carr in that situation.
Yeah, and the Saints are likely to head into the draft with at least one hole that needs to be filled. Like, they tend to work that way, where they'll fill as much as they can in free agency, try and restock after the bloodletting that needs to be done every year to get the credit card paid off. But they then go and target that, specifically with their first-round draft pick or their highest draft pick. And they've been aggressively doing that for years on years, and that's part of why they're in the sort of situation that they are. But that's how they got Chris Olave. They knew they needed a wide receiver. They went really hard at getting him, trading back into that draft to do it. Trevor Penning was supposed to be their starting left tackle. They ended up, essentially redshirting him for year one. But this is a team that will happily go into the first round or to the draft knowing that we're okay if we need to find a defensive tackle.
Yeah, the thing, too, is now it frees up a spot for potentially, I know they've always loved him. We have never graded him particularly high, but using a June 1st release on Andres Pete, the left guard, who was hurt for most of the last year, would clear the most money of between Jameis and Michael Thomas and him. He would actually clear the most money. Obviously, that doesn't kick in until June, but does free that up for them, which is interesting. Like you said, they're not afraid to go to the draft, taking exactly what they know they need, which they probably will do at interior defensive line at this point. But yeah, move on from him. Maybe even Penning plays some left guard to start and then kicks back out to tackle. I want to say James Hurst is still in the building. I'm pretty sure he's still under contract. A good swing tackle, a good backup there for a long time. So that's probably the only need. I mean, their secondary is pretty talented. Their offensive line, like I said, pretty good. It's a good roster outside of one spot right now.
Yeah, that's my concern though. With the wide receivers look great now. They've got some weapons at tight end in the backfield. Derek Carr is more than good enough to take advantage of a talented group. The question is, can they avoid the interior of the offensive line being as problematic as it was a year ago, where they had to cycle through sort of 5 players among those 3 interior positions? All 5 of them had below average PFF grades. 3 of the 5 had dramatically below average PFF pass blocking grades and were kind of majorly problematic spots along that interior. They need that to at least get to that average point, just to hold up so that Derek Carr can do what he can do against, then find those wide receivers.
And it's the same conversation we had about the Bears, too, where, look, Demario Davis and Pete Werner is a great linebacker duo, but if you have nothing up front, it hurts. And also, Cam Jordan is still an Iron Man, still a good player. We saw his underlying metrics dip a little bit last year, was not as good in pass rush win rate and pressure percentage. Now you lose Marcus Davenport going to the Minnesota Vikings. If you have no pass rush presence on the interior, because Aniumato was a phenomenal interior pass rusher when healthy or not suspended, if you have nothing there and teams can chip on a Cam Jordan, look, incredible player, like borderline Hall of Fame player, but he's not going to be that effective if you get that much attention to him in his age 33 season next year.
Yeah, the last point to make, I think, about the Thomas part of it, though, is price-wise, this is now kind of a steal. Like, we talked about how he's been good when he's been on the field. It's the kind of money that's worth the gamble, even if you're concerned about the injuries. He is being paid a relatively modest amount of money right now, and presumably the incentives only kick in if he ends up justifying it with that kind of play. That's now good value for a guy who we know has the ceiling of being one of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
110%. One last thought I want to throw in, because we're talking about the value. Great value probably does not help a lot of receivers out there. It's already been a slow market. In particular, we know Odell Beckham Jr. has said he wants a multi-year contract. He's done with the one-year mercenary stuff.
Right.
This just does not help his case there. Well, it helps Aaron Rodgers is apparently negotiating on his behalf.
True.
And trying to get the Jets to sign him. But I think if you're a team now, you say, well, Michael Thomas is just like you, really good player, but injuries, yada, yada, yada. He took the one-year flyer. Why should you not take that one-year flyer? I think this hurts his case a little bit.
So potentially huge fantasy news here. Michael Thomas, a guy we thought was going to be on the way out, ends up redoing his deal, going back to New Orleans, and now Derek Carr has a true elite number 1 wide receiver.